guys, coming back for the review for the season finale of the X-Files, Season 10, Episode 6, My Struggle Part 2, and yes, I know that this was meant to be just like a quick mini-series, but they did say that they might make more, so I'm gonna say that this is the season finale, and obviously I was looking forward to this episode. I've really been enjoying this season overall. I really was interested in seeing what this season was going to bring. It really seemed like they were going to answer a lot of the questions, and that's something that really interested me. Also, knowing this was going to be in Scully's perspective, I was very interested with that. And I have to say, guys, that not only did this not feel like a finale to me really at all, well, it did at points, a lot of it did, but I found this episode to be very underwhelming, I have to say. I really was not a fan of this episode. I didn't find it as interesting as it could have been. I found it really all over the place, very confusing at times as to what was fully going on, and definitely some stuff that I just found very unnecessary, but let's just get into it. Like I said, honestly, probably my least favorite episode of the season, guys. I gotta say, I really was not a fan of this episode, and it really sucks because we've been having really great episodes ever since episode 2, and now this one came out, and I was very disappointed by it. And I know some people were disappointed by the first episode. That's kind of how I feel about this episode. I found it to be very unnecessary, I found it to be very lacking, and I really was not a fan of it. So let's just get into my review. Basically, we start off good enough. I like the way this starts out. Very much like how my struggle started. We see Scully explaining her backstory, bringing the audience up to date. But the thing is, we don't really need this. I mean, we know what's been going on in the show. We literally had a previously on the X-Files before this. We don't need this whole monologue from Scully. What I wanted this monologue to be is her kind of giving her opinion how she feels about things, and yeah, we hear about that, but it feels so on the nose. Like, no shit, she knows she has this alien DNA in her, and she's interested to find answers. No shit about that. We know that she has this alien DNA. Hang on one second, guys. I'm gonna turn off this light. Sorry, guys, there was a really bad glare. It was really bothering me, but, we know she has this really bad, we know she has DNA in her. We know that she really wants to get her son William back. So I really found a lot of this to be very unnecessary, and that's what most of the episode was, I have to say. I found this to be a very unnecessary episode that could have been a lot more interesting. We see Scully, she heads to the X-Files office where Mulder's missing, but Tad O'Malley's website is back up and running, just out of nowhere. Now, I did like finding out that this season in general did take place in 6 weeks, so we've been watching it in real time, which is a cool idea the way they did that. I did like seeing that, but he's promising big new news, alien DNA in virtually every American citizen, and he's back all of a sudden. Just Tad O'Malley, we don't know why, he's back here. The phone rings and she answers it, and it's O'Malley. He tells her that she needs to come see him, and obviously, she doesn't really know what to do here because, she hasn't seen O'Malley in a while. So O'Malley's at Mulder's apartment where the house has been ransacked, and O'Malley says that they were planning to meet up, but that he arrived there and the doors were open. O'Malley says he also found alien DNA in himself, just like Scully found it in Savetta, so he's very convinced that he could be an alien, and Scully then calls the police. Obviously, she's freaking out. I mean, she really doesn't want to be involved in this, and she knows what happened last time, so she really doesn't want to be involved with it this time. So back to the FBI, Skinner and Einstein, surprisingly. Yes, Einstein and Miller are already back in this episode, which again, felt very just like, oh, we saw them last week, so we're gonna see them again this week. And honestly, this week, they really contributed nothing. I mean, last week's dynamic, the fun dynamic that they had, completely gone in this episode, and I really felt like their presence was, like, not needed here at all. I understand they needed them, but at least pay tribute to the character, and they really didn't. You didn't get to have any really fun moments in this episode. I mean, it didn't really feel like these characters were really needed to be introduced because they are introduced in this fun way, and then they kind of just shit all over it, and I really was not happy about that. I really wanted them to pay tributes to the character, and here it really seemed like they didn't even really need to be there. It just seemed like she needed them because she couldn't do it on her own. So when she arrives, she tells them that she's worried Mulder isn't taking her calls because he's worried that she'll think that he's crazy, and she explains O'Malley's claims, and Scully and Einstein head out to look for information because they don't know if O'Malley's telling the truth here, and they arrive at the hospital where Scully used to work, which we know, of course, from the first episode she used to work there, which I thought was a cool idea. There's a man out there sweating with a lesion on his arm. She summons a nurse to find out what he's been exposed to, and elsewhere, Mulder is driving through the countryside, his face bruised and bloody. He ignores an oncoming incoming call from Skinner and just keeps driving. And here's my thing with Mulder. Mulder really doesn't have a lot to do in this episode. He has stuff to do here and there, but for me personally, I really did not like Mulder as much in this episode. I mean, this was mainly Scully's episode, but Mulder, personally, I really felt was not really as great as he could have been. I mean, they really didn't use the character to their full potential here. It felt like this wasn't really Mulder, and just for me, it didn't really work. So, you know, the Mulder that we've been seeing, the fun Mulder, that's the guy I want to see. Not the Mulder that we've been seeing here. I really was not a fan of it. It really did not work for me, I have to say. But at the hospital, Einstein gives some blood and is skeptical that she'll find anything interesting because, you know, she doesn't know if there really is anything out there. Scully isn't so sure, so he suggests that a factor could be introduced into the body through childhood vaccines. Miller joins him, saying he's looking for Mulder too, and that people are freaking out about O'Malley's show because obviously what he's claiming is just incredible. I mean, they obviously don't really know if he's telling the truth or not because it doesn't really seem all that believable, but because of his claims, that's why everyone's freaking out. So cut to the show where O'Malley is interviewing a man who describes tampering being done to everyone's genomes and the concept of a man-made plague. Scully worries that it's not only plausible, but it's actually happening. That's why people are just getting sick and dropping like flies. So in the lobby, Scully tells the nurse that the man she saw earlier was exposed to anthrax by a botched vaccine. She's convinced that they're witnessing the start of a global contagion. And here's my thing. This didn't really feel as big as it should have. It felt very rushed. Like, all of a sudden, this global contagion. So elsewhere, Mulder's asleep in his car when an ambulance blows by with the lights on. He gets a call from Scully, but doesn't pick up for whatever reason. He's not picking up the phone. And at the X-Files office, Miller sits down and starts watching O'Malley's show, claiming that police and military are being infected by a contagion. When he does so, though, he spots Mulder's phone, finds an app, and pings it, finding that Mulder is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And back at the hospital, Einstein and Scully watch the man with the Legion. They debate what's going on. Einstein thinks that Scully is jumping to conclusions, but Scully thinks it's something much bigger, that it has nothing, that's not just, you know, there's definitely more to it, but Einstein tells her that she's still not seeing widespread infection, that it's one affected class. Scully can't explain how or what any of her theories would make sense. Einstein points out that something would have to be taken away from the genome, not added to it, for it to make any sense, and I really was not a fan of Einstein in this episode. Einstein and Scully, this is why they didn't work together last week, because I don't really think they work very well together. I mean, you have Scully, who at times was like Einstein, but Einstein, I really did not like her. I liked her last week. She was annoying, but I did not like her here, I have to say. I was not a fan of her. So Scully gets an anonymous call from someone who was there for you when you needed it, offering information on what's going on. Who this is, we don't know. And in the park, Scully meets with Agent Reese, and he tells a story when she was summoned by a nearly dead The Smoking Man. Yes, the Smoking Man is back in this episode, and let's just talk about this, because we know that he was introduced in the first episode. He said, oh, I know that the X-Files have reopened, and then it just kind of went away. For whatever reason, he's back in this episode. No explanation, really, no reason why he's there, and had we seen him maybe plot things out, maybe try to make a ground plan for Scully and Mulder, I would have been fine with that, you know, had we seen him plan throughout the season. Here, it just seemed like, oh, he was in the first episode, so we gotta put him in this episode. That's really what it seemed like to me, that every element of My Struggle Part 1 had to be in My Struggle Part 2, and no, it did not need to be. It really could have been its own thing, and it really wasn't. So he offered her the deal. He'll spare her life if DNA, if she does something. She says he had the ability to build impurities into the DNA of all but the chosen, and that to prevent him depopulating the world, she would have to become his servant. She was the one where he realized who brought him his cigarette at the end of My Struggle, and he says he plans to reinvent the world in his image rather than God's. And again, had we seen him plan things out, I would have felt like, okay, this is really interesting. But having him be the central villain of this season all along and us not realizing it really feels like, oh, we could have just had him on for the season. To me, it seems like he was supposed to be on here and they just cut him out. Like, they didn't realize what they needed to do with him. And last thing, they're like, oh yeah, we have the Smoking Man, we should probably do something with that. So they did that in this episode. That's not really how you do it. I mean, doing that is just simply just being like, oh, it makes you look really stupid when you do that. And that's exactly what they did here. So Reese says she's been protected. She's one of the chosen who will be saved. She says since the cancer man loves Mulder, he sent a man to offer him a deal. Cut to Mulder's apartment getting into a fight with an intruder. It's what bloodied him and trashed the apartment. When a man gets to the upper hand, he prepares to shoot Mulder, but Mulder manages to stop him, holds a gun to him, demands to know who sent him. And next we see Mulder holding a gun to the smoking man's head, saying that he sent for him and he's there. He tells smoking man to put a stop to what he's put in motion, but the smoking man says it's too late for that. He tells Mulder that he may not believe this, but he really does want to save Mulder's life, and Mulder says he doesn't make deals with the smoking man. The smoking man says he didn't set out to destroy the world. People did, and he talks about the destruction of the environment that aliens predicted decades ago. He says that he plotted the timetable himself rather than letting it happen, and this just, again, it feels out of nowhere, because it really seemed like he was going to be the villain of the season, like something was going on with him. Why was he so interested in them reopening the X-Files? I mean, it seemed like he really had this darker plan, and now we're realizing that he might not have, so very interesting. Mulder threatens to kill him. He's not believing any of this bullshit that he's saying, and basically he says to take a seat at the table, but Mulder says he couldn't look at himself in the mirror. Basically, the smoking man tells Mulder it isn't too late to make a deal, prevent himself dying within weeks, and again, I just didn't care. I wish I cared. I just didn't care because we hadn't seen this character at all. So to me, this just seemed like it was completely out of left field. So cut to O'Malley, who's reporting on a widespread outbreak of outbreaks that aren't being covered by the mainstream media. He gives a number of examples, usually born of things that are already the subject of everyday paranoia, like chemtrails and basically, at the hospital, Mulder's looking for Einstein, who's now scared. The Center for Disease Control is confirming massive contagions. They can't control, but Scully thinks that they can help. Scully says that the only way to save humanity is the alien DNA that's inside of her. She says the contagion is being caused by a Spartan virus, which can be cured using something made for her DNA. Question, if Einstein was so scared of what was going on, why the fuck is she in this job? Like, she should be prepared for this kind of stuff. She's supposed to be very experienced. She's supposed to know what, well, not really experienced, but she's supposed to be very smart. She's supposed to be fearless, and I don't know, that really didn't make any sense to me. I mean, it just didn't really go with her character, I think. So, at the Smoking Man's house, Mulder's collapsed on the ground, still refusing to work with him. Smoking Man tells him that he'll miss him and that he made his life truly worth living. He removes a facial prosthetic, revealing his hideously deformed face. Mulder says he wishes Scully were there to see what a monster Smoking Man has become. And at the hospital, Scully and Einstein are working on their cure, but they can't find a trace of the alien DNA in their test culture. The nurse from earlier comes in, tells Scully that all the doctors are getting sick, and Mally's still broadcasting, now reporting on the details of soldiers and the elderly who are on the forefront of the attack. There are reports that the same is happening in Europe and that microwaves are being used as a delivery device. And at the hospital, things have gone from bad to worse. Einstein's trying to help Scully figure out what is happening. Scully speculates that alien DNA could hide from her when she was looking for a cure. Einstein says that their mistake was that their sample was too small. And at the Smoking Man's house, Miller arrives to save Mulder, but the Smoking Man says that there's nothing to be done to save either of them, and Miller takes Mulder nevertheless, and Einstein, now starting to get sick, is drawing blood from Scully to get a larger sample to find a cure, and Miller then takes Mulder to the car. Mulder asks him what's the Smoking Man, for the cure, and that he only didn't ask because that's what Smoking Man would have wanted, and Miller asks Smoking Man who he is, and Smoking Man says to only tell Mulder goodbye for him, and of course, Miller doesn't really know, what the Smoking Man's agenda is here, so he's just gonna go along with it, but you can tell that he really doesn't trust him. Back at the hospital, Scully's isolated the gene that could be a cure. Einstein goes to lie down. Miller calls into Scully, saying that he's on the road with Mulder, but that since there's around gasoline, they may break down before they get to her. And at the hospital, Scully hangs an IV on Einstein, saying that they need to do the same for the other doctors so that they in turn can help the others. O'Malley's getting sicker, his technology is failing. At this point, guys, I'm lost. I was completely taken out of the episode, like there's way too much going on here. This is just feeling like this should have been a much longer finale. And in the streets of Washington, D.C., a traffic jam has paralyzed traffic. Scully works her way through the increasingly violent streets with IVs full of cure. Stops telling that help is on the way. O'Malley receives a text, one from Scully, that says that there may be a cure and to not give up. And then the ending of this episode, we see Scully gets into her car, but has to drive along the sidewalks to get anywhere due to the traffic. And unable to make her way through the traffic, she has to get out of her vehicle on a bridge in order to find Miller and Mulder. When she gets in the car, Mulder tells her to save Miller too. She tells Miller that's what Mulder needs is cells from William, but she doesn't know where he is, and that annoyed me. I mean, they've been talking all season long about William. We get this one little mention, and she's like, oh, I don't know where he is. Like, she was so interested in finding him. fucking find him. That should have been the plot of this episode, is let's go find William. That's not what it was, though. So just then a UFO appears overhead, lights up the bridge, focusing on the area where Scully and Miller are standing. The episode ends with a close-up on Scully's eye, and basically Scully is in fact an alien, is confirmed after this episode. That's how the episode ends. So, I really was not a fan of this episode, guys, I have to say, and it's not because of the fact that, you know, I really found a lot of this predictable, and it was a lot of been there, done that, and I thought that it was really not a finale. This really did not feel like a finale at all. It felt like part 1 of a finale. Like, it felt like there's another part next week, but there's not. You're kidding? You're telling me this is the finale? Like, everything we've been building up towards, this is the finale? Here's my biggest thing. Here's why this did not work at all. What they should have done is had the Smoking Man throughout the season, plotting here and there, not seeing him all the time, but seeing him just enough that we know he's out there, we know he has a plan, we don't really know what it is, and just, you know, seeing him here, after not seeing him since the first episode, did not work at all, and it really just seemed like they just needed a villain, so they brought him in, and really didn't work for me. Like I said, Einstein and Miller, I really was not fans of at all in this episode. I really thought they didn't really have much to do here, and especially because of how interesting they were last week, I really was not a fan of them here, and I think a lot of the action scenes really didn't work out. There were really no sweet scenes between Scully and Mulder, which this is a season finale. That's one of the best things about the show, and this episode had barely any scenes between those two, and if this really is the season finale, the series finale, what the fuck? Why would you do this? I mean, this is really dumb. They're definitely making more. This is definitely not the end. I'm saying that right now. This is definitely not the end, because if this is the end, I'm going to be really pissed, because that is not how you end a show at all. I mean, this is completely wrong the way this was done. Scully and Mulder had almost no interaction whatsoever. Scully do this all on her own, and I really, like I said, was not a fan of this episode. I thought this was a very weak finale. I thought after everything we were building up to, I really wanted something more out of this, and I really wanted to see something more from these characters, but we really didn't get that. But overall, guys, what do you think of this season overall? I did enjoy this season. I think episodes 2, 3, 5, they were great. They were really great episodes, definitely. I really did enjoy them. It's just, we really didn't have a series. It seemed like we were building to Scully finding William and wanting to interact with him, and then they just kind of abandoned. She's like, oh, I don't know where he is. Well, you were the one that's wanted to find him all season, so go try to find him. I mean, I don't really know what's going to happen here, what the future for this show is, but I gotta say, like I said, it was very let down by this finale. I really wanted more from it, but let me know what you guys thought of this finale. I'd love to hear your thoughts tonight. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Better Call Saul, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.